Fox News says Hillary Clinton paid people to hack Donald Trump. Wait, is that true? Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. Donald Trump has been saying he was spied on for 5 years now.
There's a big thing going on right now, which is spying, and you can call it anything you want. The unmasking and the spying, and to me, that's the big story right now.
He's been saying this since 2017? When has Trump been this consistent about anything? Besides, of course, his haircut. And China. And forgetting that Tiffany exists. To be fair, she is pretty forgettable. So much so that you probably didn't even notice this isn't a picture of her. It's actually Amanda Seyfried. That's what happens when you don't look closely enough at something because you think it confirms your narrative. There will be more examples of that later in this episode. So many more. Back in 2017, Trump thought his team was spied on during his presidential campaign. Now, there are claims Trump was spied on in the White House. These claims come from special counsel John Durham, an attorney for the Justice Department who is investigating the origins of the FBI's Trump-Russia probe. Think of John Durham as the Republicans' Robert Mueller. Conservatives are sure that Durham is going to blow the deep state collusion conspiracy against Trump wide open. Just like liberals were sure that Mueller was going to blow the Trump-Russia collusion conspiracy wide open. The biggest difference is that, unlike with Robert Mueller, no one is making John Durham prayer candles. Thank God. Last Friday, Durham said in court filings that a tech executive used his access to White House computer data to look for dirt on Trump. According to media reports, the tech executive who was allegedly looking for dirt on Trump is former New Star Senior Vice President Rodney Jaffe. And he was allegedly giving that information to his lawyer, Michael Sussman, who worked for the law firm Perkins Coie. If that name sounds familiar, it's because one of Perkins Coie's clients was Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. Perkins Coie commissioned Fusion GPS to do opposition research on Trump, which resulted in the infamous Steele dossier, which was paid for by the Clinton campaign and the DNC. Anyway, Sussman passed that information along to the FBI. But Sussman was indicted last September for allegedly lying to the FBI while pushing a Trump-Russia connection. So of course, right-leaning media had a field day, with headlines about the Clinton campaign paying to infiltrate Trump and White House servers to link Trump to Russia, how Donald Trump really was spied on, and how the special counsel proved Clinton spied on Trump and hacked his servers. Meanwhile, left-leaning media are accusing right-leaning media like Fox News of exaggerations and having the wrong narrative. So who was right? Well, both sides were looking at Amanda Seyfried and seeing their own Tiffany Trump instead. Which means it's time once again for our popular segment, Wait, is that true? Coming up right after the break. Welcome back. Right-leaning media are claiming that DOJ special counsel John Durham says the Clinton campaign paid people to infiltrate Trump's servers to tie him to Russia. But wait, is that true? Stay with me here, it gets complicated. To get to the bottom of this, we had to go back to John Durham's indictment of former Perkins Coie partner Michael Sussman from last September. That indictment was for making a false statement to the FBI. Michael Sussman specializes in cybersecurity law. Back in September 2016, he gave the FBI evidence indicating computer servers at Trump Tower were secretly communicating with a Russian bank called Alpha Bank. Durham alleges that Sussman lied to the FBI when giving them this information. Sussman said he was not doing his work on behalf of any client. So the FBI thought Sussman was acting as a good citizen, passing on information, not a political operative. Instead, Durham says Sussman was working for both the Clinton campaign and tech executive Rodney Jaffe. And he has the receipts. Literally. Sussman had multiple meetings about the Trump and Alpha Bank servers with Jaffe and Mark Elias, the Clinton campaign's main lawyer at Perkins Coie. Durham points to the fact that when Sussman was having these meetings, Sussman billed his time to the Clinton campaign. According to Durham, Sussman also billed the time he spent meeting with the FBI to the Clinton campaign. Okay, that definitely makes it look like he was working on this for the Clinton campaign. But Sussman has pleaded not guilty to the charges of lying to the FBI. So how did he explain why he was billing the Clinton campaign? Sussman's lawyers say he was billing the Clinton campaign because he wasn't charging Jaffe for the Alpha Bank work, but he had to bill his hours somewhere to show Perkins Coie he was working on something. Also, the Clinton campaign didn't actually pay for his hours because they pay a flat fee to the law firm. So Sussman's defense is Clinton wasn't actually getting charged for his time, and hey, he had to bill to something. No wonder people hate lawyers. Based on Sussman's information, the FBI opened an investigation into ties between Trump's servers and Alpha Bank. But they ultimately concluded that the email server involved was not owned or operated by the Trump Organization. Instead, it was administered by a mass marketing email company that was sending advertisements for Trump hotels. In other words, it was not proof that the Trump Organization was secretly communicating with Russia. Instead, it was likely a marketing company sending ads for Trump hotels, although some questions remain about the data, which feels a lot like the entire Russia collusion story in a nutshell. Lots of hype, no provable collusion, some questions remain. Speaking of hype, Sussman was also pushing the Trump Alpha Bank story to reporters. That's according to emails obtained by Durham. The media started reporting the Trump and Alpha Bank servers story. The biggest article was published in October 2016, which the Clinton campaign then hyped as the most direct link yet between Donald Trump and Moscow. By the way, Sussman billed his hours for reaching out to the media to the Clinton campaign, which is definitely not helping his case. But Durham's indictment of Sussman has a lot more information about what his client, tech executive Rodney Jaffe, was doing, too. According to Durham, Jaffe exploited his access to non-public data at multiple internet companies to conduct opposition research on Donald Trump. Jaffe also had the assistance of researchers at a U.S.-based university who were analyzing internet data for a pending federal government cybersecurity contract. Those researchers were at the Georgia Institute of Technology, also known as Georgia Tech, and they were helping Jaffe by analyzing their data for ties between Trump and Russia. At one point, Jaffe emailed them saying that if they could find evidence of anything that shows an attempt to behave badly in relation to this, the VIPs would be happy. The email doesn't specify who the VIPs are. Georgia Tech researchers also helped write one of the white papers Sussman gave to the FBI and provided interviews on background to the media about the Alpha Bank story at Sussman's request. Now, all that's very sketchy. Georgia Tech was using data they had access to as part of a government contract to help Jaffe attack Trump. But that's not necessarily illegal. And just to be clear, at no point does Durham allege that Rodney Jaffe or the Georgia Tech researchers were paid by the Clinton campaign. He just talks about how Michael Sussman was billing his work to the Clinton campaign. Although after the 2016 election was over, Sussman continued to work on the Trump Alpha Bank issue until early 2017. He stopped billing to the Clinton campaign since it no longer existed. Instead, he billed some of that time to Rodney Jaffe. In February 2017, Sussman met with the CIA and gave them updated information on the Trump Alpha Bank allegations. He again claimed he was not working for a particular client, although, in testimony in front of a congressional committee in December 2017, Sussman said when he contacted the FBI and the CIA, he was acting on behalf of a client. This guy needs to get his story straight. Anyway, everything I just talked about was in Durham's indictment of Sussman from September 2021. So why is the story blowing up now? I'll explain after the break. Welcome back. Last Friday, Special Counsel John Durham filed a conflict of interest motion related to Michael Sussman's case. It had a background section that summarized many of the points Durham made in his indictment back in September. But it also had some new information. The biggest thing was that tech executive Rodney Joffe was not just analyzing data from Trump Tower or Trump's Central Park West apartment. He also had data from the Executive Office of the President of the United States. So basically, part of the White House. How did Joffe have access to that? Well, the company he worked for, Neustar, was providing DNS resolution services for the Executive Office of the President. And Durham alleges Joffe used this access to gather derogatory information about Donald Trump. Then, Joffe gave that DNS data to Sussman, who gave it to the CIA in his 2017 meeting. Sussman claimed the data showed suspicious DNS lookups, demonstrating that Trump and his associates were using rare Russian-made wireless phones around the White House. Except according to Durham, that wasn't true. Durham alleges Joffe and Sussman were making the allegations using incomplete data, and that the more complete data would have shown these DNS lookups at the White House began back in 2014 during the Obama administration. So it probably wasn't Trump walking around using Russian phones. Unless, nah. So let's talk about the reactions to Durham's latest court filing. Donald Trump, always a voice of calm and reason, responded to the news by calling it a scandal far greater in scope and magnitude than Watergate, and said that in a stronger period of time in our country, this crime would have been punishable by death. That's a bit dramatic, but accurate. Because if someone used computers to gather and reveal private information on someone in a stronger period of time in our country, they definitely would have been burned at the stake for witchcraft. Meanwhile, the New York Times called it mostly wrong or old news. So the choice seems to be either worse than Watergate or a big nothing burger. As is often the case, the truth seems to be somewhere in the messy middle. Or not, if you listen to Fox News host Jesse Waters.
Durham's documents show that Hillary Clinton hired people who hacked into Trump's home and office computers before and during his presidency and planted evidence that he colluded with Russia. Yeah, you heard that right. Hillary broke into a presidential candidate's computer server and a sitting president's computer server, spying on him.
Amazing. I just spent 10 minutes explaining to you in detail, with citations, what Durham's documents actually said. Instead, I could have just made stuff up for 30 seconds. It would have been a lot easier. I guess that's why I'm not on cable. Anyway, nothing Jesse Waters said was true. Durham did not say Hillary Clinton hired Joffe or the Georgia Tech researchers. No one hacked into Trump's computers or planted evidence he colluded with Russia. Although I like how he made it sound like Hillary personally broke into Trump's computer server, like she's Angelina Jolie from Hackers. The word hack is getting thrown around a lot with this story. But Trump wasn't hacked. Joffe and the Georgia Tech researchers were looking at data they already had access to. Plus, the type of data they were looking at was limited. They only had access to domain name systems, or DNS data. That means they could see what websites Trump's servers were connecting with, but not any of the information being transferred. So they could see a Trump-linked server communicating with Alpha Bank, but they couldn't tell whether that was secret money transfers or marketing emails. Turns out it was not secret money transfers. Another word getting thrown around a lot by conservative media is infiltrate. In this Fox News headline, it's in quotation marks, like it's a quote from Durham. It's not. Durham never says that word anywhere in the documents. Are we the only people who read the original documents? So right-leaning media are exaggerating a lot of what Durham actually said. What about spying? Was Trump spied on? I think you could actually make a case for that. Durham is saying Rodney Joffe and the Georgia Tech researchers were searching their data for links between Trump and Russia. Sure, they were legally allowed to have access to that data, but they weren't supposed to be using it to target Trump, which is what Durham alleges they did. Of course, they're denying it. Two lawyers working for one of the Georgia Tech researchers say the researchers were just investigating malware in the White House, not spying on the Trump campaign, and that to their knowledge, all of the data was public data from before Trump took office. And here's a problem. Left-leaning media, in their rebuttals to right-leaning media stories, are relying pretty heavily on denials from the lawyers of Sussman, Jaffe, and the Georgia Tech researchers. I mean, they're lawyers. That's their job, deny everything. It doesn't mean they're telling the truth. Here's what Jaffe's spokesperson said. Jaffe was apolitical, did not work for any political party, and had lawful access to analyze the data for security breaches or threats. Sure, no one is saying Jaffe didn't have lawful access to the data. The question is, did he then use that data to do opposition research on Trump? Also, he claims to be apolitical. However, Durham quotes an email from Jaffe after the 2016 election that said, "I was tentatively offered the top cybersecurity job by the Democrats when it looked like they'd win. I would definitely not take the job under Trump," which doesn't sound super apolitical to me. In another email, one of the researchers talks about how the group is motivated by their dislike of Trump. Sounds like that could have influenced what they saw as suspicious. And while Jaffe may not have worked for a political party, there was definitely some communication and possible coordination going on between Jaffe and people working for the Clinton campaign, like Perkins Coie lawyer Mark Elias. The Durham indictment talks about several meetings between them about the Trump Alpha Bank allegations. There was also email contact between Jaffe and Fusion GPS, the firm that did opposition research on Trump. Of course, we don't know what those emails say. But in their haste to debunk the Fox News narrative, the New York Times didn't exactly question their own narrative either. And there are definitely some holes there. Let's go back to the lawyer's claim that the DNS data researchers looked at was all from before Trump took office, which could be technically true. Durham also says some of the data was from the Obama administration. But if none of the White House data involved Trump, how would researchers know Trump and his associates were using Russian cell phones around the White House? Unless, Left-leaning media also point out that Durham hasn't charged Rodney Jaffe or the Georgia Tech researchers with any crimes. Yes, that's true. But something doesn't have to be illegal to be shady. It's just not quite as shady as conservatives claim or as pure and innocent as liberals claim. There's still a lot of questions. And Special Counsel John Durham hasn't finished his probe into the origins of the FBI's Russia investigation. Michael Sussman's lawyers claim that Durham is biased and that his recent court filings show that. They said, "This is not the first time in this case that the special counsel has sought to include allegations about uncharged conduct in public filings and done so using inflammatory and prejudicial rhetoric." They've asked the judge to strike the most recent allegations from the case. Wait, they don't like someone making inflammatory public accusations about them based on a biased narrative? Doesn't feel so good when it happens to you, does it? So what do you think about these developments? Would you like to see more episodes of Wait, Is That True? Let us know in the comments below. And if you like this show, please know we could not do it without direct support from viewers like you. Visit patreon.com/AmericaUncovered and contribute $1 or more per episode to help us keep the show going. So click the link below. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.